Everyone knows what it means to get a bad ending in a video game. Like when the game gives you a decision where you know it's the bad one. So you're like, let me do a quick manual save just to see what would happen. And then, you get the bad ending. What can do? Like, sorry, I wanted to see what would happen if I just didn't want to do the boring Persona 5 Factory freaking palace. God.
That's right, homie.
But when some games do have like multiple endings that you can get, it's just up to the player to interpret whether or not they believe they got the good or the bad ending. But then there's some games that do have like an actual good, bad, neutral ending where the developer tells you whether or not you got a good or bad ending. And then they kind of just shame you on if you got the bad ending, like, hey, you're a really, really bad person, you know that? However, I wanted to focus on the other games that do create multiple endings, where the developer doesn't straight up tell you whether or not you got the good or bad ending, and it's totally just up to the player to decide on if they're happy with the ending they got. These kind of games kind of don't tell the player whether or not they got a good or bad ending, and what I like about these games is really it's up for the player to interpret whether or not they think they got a good ending or whether or not they think they got a bad ending. And the games I wanted to focus on were going to be the super duper woke liberal Life is Strange 2, Detroit Become Human, aka the Race War game, and The Walking Dead game season 2 and 3.
You should probably think about being nicer to me. That's just my advice.
Alright, and with that being said, spoilers ahead for the games. So you can just skip over. If you want to watch the whole video, go ahead. Or if you want to just skip over to the next part, do whatever you want. I don't really give a shit. So let's go. For Detroit Become Human, everyone knows that game for that one part of the
28 stab wounds.
But basically, you play as 3 androids with their own story and goals, with the main theme being that, androids are people too. Never seen that before. Groundbreaking. But the 3 characters that you're going to be playing in this game are going to be Connor, the best story, Kara, who escapes an abusive home with a little girl, and then Marcus. He's the activist for the androids. Wait, he also looks familiar too.
You have a weapon? Do you have multiple weapons and going to Jesse! Okay, all right.
And each of these character stories can intertwine with another, although they're playing on 3 different paths. For example, if you choose to be violent during your protest when you play as Marcus, it can cause humans to view you more negatively and be more fearful of you, which then affects Kara, who wants to cross the Canadian border, but the guy's like, no. TBH, this is what I like about games made by Quantic Dream, where it feels like your choices do actually matter and they do branch out and can affect other people. I'm actually so glad that Quantic is one of the good game companies that, that's not, damn! But yeah, this game really doesn't hold your hand on the choices and doesn't really soften the blows on the choices you make. Where if your character dies in the game, that's their ending. Like, that's it. Your character is just dead and you can never play them ever again. Unless you're playing as Connor, where if you just die, then, you just get rebuilt again at a Temu factory and then get revived and pretend like nothing happened.
It's a Christmas miracle.
But yeah, basically there's a lot of endings in this game. So I'm just going to focus on the main ones, assuming that, everyone stays alive and yada, yada, yada. For Connor's endings, it's going to be that he doesn't become deviant, and then he stops the revolution, and then he gets replaced. Or he becomes deviant and joins the revolution. And then Kara's endings are going to be she can either successfully escape into Canada, she can get caught and be sent to a recall center, or when she gets sent to the recall center, she can have her Miles Morales moment and be like,
I'm gonna do my own thing.
And abandon the girl to escape by herself. I don't know if this is. And then for Marcus's endings, he can either succeed in his revolution through violence or peace. Or just simply, fail the revolution and die. Or he can finally get the intruder to escape his house. One of those 4. I feel like with the endings this game gives you, it's obvious that the game lets you know which ending's a good one and which one's a bad one. Like, obviously, abandoning the girl you escaped an abusive household from, for her to be destroyed, isn't really the good ending, I think.
Kara, please come and save me, Kara.
Or choosing to say that androids don't have free will and stop the revolution from happening. The game really just tells you throughout the story that androids are as equal as people and doesn't really make you question or doubt this. The only time I can guess it'd be negative was like the first mission you play as Connor, but other than that, really, it's kind of like they're kind of justified in their actions, if that makes sense. Just like humans. Whoa! But yeah, the game's multiple endings are interesting to see how your choices do in fact change the endings. Although it doesn't specifically tell you, you're kind of hinted that, hey, you know, you chose a bad ending, you know, you got a good ending.
Figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
On the endings you get, the game isn't really ambiguous on whether or not you think you got a good or bad ending. It kind of just hints and tells you basically that, hey, you got a good ending because your characters are happy, or hey, you got a bad ending because your characters are sad. There really is no gray area on the good or bad ending. It's kind of just sort of a black or white, yes or no answer on whether or not you got a good or bad ending. I'd say for Detroit Become Human, the endings are not ambiguous and not up to the player. Although the game does put in a great effort into making your choices matter and having multiple endings, the game ultimately does have a story it does want to tell and a message it wants to tell you.
May God bless you all. And may God bless the United States of America.
Farmers, bum 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 bum.
Oh my god, this ending could have had potential. This choice was the craziest ever that had everyone waiting for season 3. Seeing how their final choice in season 2 is gonna play through in season 3, like, oh my god, like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen in the story? What's gonna happen to Clementine? But then, as we know now, you know, that choice didn't really matter because budget cuts and Telltale is going bankrupt now. And maybe that wouldn't have happened if our season 2 choice mattered. But basically, I'm going to summarize these endings really quickly in case you were living under a rock in like 2015, 2016. So there are 2 main choices in season 2 that ultimately affect what final choice you get. This one being either you let Kenny kill Jane or you kill Kenny. From this choice, you can choose to either go with Kenny or Jane or have a Spider-Man moment and be like, going with Kenny, you choose to go to Wellington where you're told that there's only room for Clementine and AJ. So you can either choose to go into Wellington with no Kenny or choose to just leave altogether. To me, choosing to leave Kenny is the best choice here, and then I'll come back to the significance of this later on. And then if you go with Jane, you can go back to Carver's as a shelter since all the supplies are still there to be able to live comfortably. When suddenly a family comes asking for help and Jane, being the responsible adult that she is, decides to make Clementine make the final choice to decide whether or not to let him in or not.
Cool hat.
This doesn't really seem like a big choice in my opinion. It does seem reasonable to choose not to let him in because, you know, it's a zombie apocalypse. And also, this isn't really a hard choice for the player considering the fact that the player had to say, yeah, Jane choosing to almost kill AJ for a point was good. Let me go with her to even get this ending. So, yeah.
I understand if you're upset. AJ was never in any danger. I was just going to try to talk you into coming with me. I just thought if you saw Kenny like that, you'd know we'd have to leave him.
Lastly, there's the Spider-Verse ending where Clem leads with AJ to who knows where. I think, in my opinion, that this is the best ending for Clementine. Jane is Jane, literally choosing to almost kill AJ just to prove a point. But Kenny is a different case. As the player, we see Kenny literally going through tough times with us throughout the series, where his family dies in the first season and then his new wife dies in the second season. These traumatic events literally affected how Kenny behaves and becomes more unstable throughout season 2. Jane legit calls him out on this in the truck scene.
You know the thing about people like you, Kenny? You're just a bomb waiting to go off. Everyone talks about you behind your back because they're afraid of you.
That ain't
Mike,
true.
Bonnie, Sarita.
Fucking liar, that ain't true.
Everyone around you knows that sooner or later, they're gonna end up dead. Sarita knew it, I know it, and so does Clementine.
I told you not to talk about my family.
You.
And you know what? I was cheering when Jane said this because it's true. I know some people absolutely love Kenny, which I understand, as you kind of played him You played with him throughout the whole series to this point, and he is a good guy, but people change, even if they are in video games. Kenny just isn't the same person who he was in Season 1, or hell, the beginning of Season 2. Once he loses Kasha, he becomes a shell of his former self, just driven by anger and fear. Choosing to leave with Kenny can be comforting since he's been around you your whole game, but it can be a choice that is blinded by that puts AJ and Clementine in harm's way due to how unstable Kenny is and what it means for the future. But guess what? Too bad literally none of this matters in Season 3. So yeah, your choice did not matter at all in the third season of the game. Telltale ran out of money after having rights to make a Batman, a Guardians of the Galaxy, Lord of the Rings, and even Minecraft game, and decided to just have every ending funnel into a single storyline so that Clementine can just have some role in the third game so that people would buy it. In Telltale's defense, it completely makes sense to do this, since it would have been too much for them to make completely different story branches for Clementine and AJ without affecting the main story of Season 3. The way that the game explains how Clementine ended up where she is in Season 3 is that if Clem goes to Wellington, it gets raided and then it leaves. If they go to Carver's camp, Jane finds out she's pregnant and then kills herself, which for the Kenny fans will love.
Miss Miller.
But it's not in character for her. Like, her pregnancy was still in the early stages from what it looked like, and there could have been some effort for her to get rid of it, but no. Jane just suddenly sees the positive sign and then she's like, okay, let me go myself real quick. And then for Kenny's ending, he decides that he's in a Forza game and then he suddenly decides to go turbo-tastic and then he just crashes and then he gets paralyzed and then he gets ate by walkers or whatever. For this ending, I can't even hate. This one just seems like the most okay-ish explanation to why Kenny isn't with you in Season 3. I mean, it can happen, but I feel like Kenny is such a major character throughout the game that he should have died in a more heroic way, if that kind of makes sense. Overall though, the Walking Dead game Season 2 endings, not considering the third season, does a great job on not telling you whether the ending you got was good or bad. The game doesn't punish Clementine for going with Jane or abandoning Kenny. In the end though, it's just up to you to decide if you're happy with the choices you made and if you're happy with the ending that you chose to get. And when I say it's up to you, I literally mean it's up to you. Don't go on Reddit after you finish the ending and then say, hey, I got this ending, and then you get flamed for going with Jane. So throughout Life is Strange 2, you're playing as Sean Diaz, where you're tagged along by your brother Daniel, and then your main goal in the game is to flee the country and go into Mexico. Throughout the game, your choices matter in how your brother views himself and the world around him. The game kind of uses a morality point system where doing high morality things like helping others and doing low morality things like hurting others affects your brother's morality.
She's dead.
So yada yada yada, you play the game, you make choices, and then at the end of the game, you arrive to the border, surrounded by police officers asking you to surrender. Here you are met with one final choice. Either choose to surrender to the police or force your way into Mexico. When I first played this game, I was like, damn, is it really the only two endings in this game? But you know what? I chose to surrender to the police. And since I had a high morality throughout the game, Daniel decided to surrender with me too, knowing it's the right thing to do. Well, the right thing to me anyways. We'll get more into that. My thought process was that I was just hoping the US justice system can help us, but I don't even know what I was thinking. You're playing as two Mexican kids, where the public thinks they purposely killed a police officer. But anyways, Sean and his brother surrender, where Daniel continues to live a normal life with his grandparents, but Sean spends 15 years in prison. I was like, damn, what if I just choose to go to Mexico instead? So I reloaded my save file quickly and then chose to barge into Mexico. But since Daniel had a high morality and didn't think I was making the right choice, he decided to jump out of the car last minute so that Sean was the only one that got into Mexico. And you know what I thought? I was like, damn, this is somehow a worse ending than the 15 years in prison one. The brothers are separated, living two different lives where they no longer see each other. And after staring at the screen for 5 minutes being like, what the f*** I do? I went on Reddit and I found out there's 4 endings that are dependent on the final choice you made and Daniel's overall morality. Hell, there's one ending where Daniel straight up just does his Miles Morales moment.
Now it's my turn to take care of us, Sean. Nothing can stop the Wolf Brothers. What? Daniel! No! Stop!
And if Sean decides to surrender and Daniel has low morality, Daniel can force them to go into Mexico, leaving Sean dead. And Daniel to be an epic crime boss in Mexico. I changed my mind about the brothers being separated ending. This was probably the worst ending you can get. I go on Reddit to get my super epic karma up and then find out some people prefer that ending rather to going to prison. Or some people prefer the brothers being separated ending instead of making it to Mexico. It just feels like everyone who played this game has their own interpretations on the endings and the choice to even flee the police in the beginning. Everyone just has their own morals and their own thought process. That's a crazy thought to me, I know. But then this thought is the reason how I got the idea for this video. Like, the idea that there can be multiple endings in a video game isn't really a new idea, it's been done before. But when those multiple endings are completely ambiguous and are up to the player to decide if they're happy with the ending they got, oh, I love this. I think that when a game can divide the players on whether they're happy with the endings they got, shows that the game created good characters with a good story, and it allows the players to put their own thought process into the final choice. Like for example, I chose to get the surrender ending because, lore drop, when I do have issues in my real life, I hate to ignore or run away from them. I just get too anxious to leave the issues at rest, and I feel much better at facing the consequences of these issues rather than run away from them. What's interesting though is that someone else playing the game can think the opposite and choose a different ending that aligns to their own personal beliefs and morals. The endings of Life is Strange 2 aren't just endings for Sean and Daniel's story, but also about players projecting their own beliefs into the final choice. It's rare to find a game that doesn't tell you what to think or feel and make you question the choices you made long after you made those choices. This then opens up the conversation or arguments among the players about what they believe the right choice was. But in the end, the right choice is the choice that you are happy with. Not the developers, not some YouTuber, not other players on Reddit, but you. So, in a way, that's what makes the ambiguous ending in Life is Strange 2 so powerful. It allows you to confront your own personal values and morals, not only feeling like Sean and Daniel's story, but also feel like yours.
How does the story of the Wolf brothers end?
I think their story ends right here.
In the end though, I feel like for a game to have an ambiguous ending means that it just must be able to create deep characters and create situations that the player can relate and compare their own life to. In addition to this, it must also have a story without a specific message it wants to convey to the player. Having a specific message it wants to tell the player doesn't really allow the player to decide for themselves if they're happy with the ending they got, because the creators already have an ending they want to tell, if that makes sense. Detroit Become Human's gameplay and characters both are very strong and deep, with the idea that your choices actually do branch out and each character's stories don't have the same goals. However, it wants to tell a story that ultimately says that androids are people too, and have implications of real-life racism. So if you do end up siding with the idea that androids aren't people for some reason, the game tells you that this is a bad ending since, you know, racism is bad or whatever.
If a man has not discovered something he will die for, he's not fit to live. That's a quote from Martin Luther King. I thought you'd like it.
But also, if that didn't convince you, literally Connor's ending, if you choose to do this, just hasn't been replaced. Just as a big you to the player if they thought this was the right thing to do.
You've become obsolete. You'll be deactivated. You can go now.
The Walking Dead game though did a great job on having their ambiguous endings resonate within the player, and to me is on the same part of Life is Strange 2. But since this is a series, the next season ended up just ruining this ambiguity since they had to continue Clem's story one way or another. It's just that the time period between the second and the third season had the most heated conversations about this ending, and I fear that was the peak of this ending. Just arguing with other players about which ending was the best. It almost brought a tear to my eye. The time between the second and third season, the hiatus basically, is ultimately what made the ending so powerful. Just not knowing what's gonna happen next, if they're gonna keep whatever store choice you made. But the third season ruined it, which is normal for this series to do since money, you know?
Revealed that they are both planning to put advertisements within their video games.
Squish me! Squish me!
Life is Strange 2 did, in my opinion, the best ambiguous ending out of all these games. It created a strong story with themes of family and morality, and giving you choices on what would be best for Sean and Daniel, or what would be the right moral thing for them to do. Then, all of the choices you made throughout the whole game accumulates into the final choice, where it's just up to your belief to choose what is right for the boys, and that's what makes the ending so powerful. As you're not just choosing an ending that the game hints you should choose, but ties in with your personal morals and reflects your own moral compass. It transforms the game experience into something both personal and emotional. And for this is why I believe Life is Strange 2 has the best ambiguous endings for all video games. Period.
Monsieur, does this mean Overwatch is back?
No.
Thank you guys for watching to the end, or just skipping to whatever game you really cared about. I'd be doing that too, so don't even worry about it. Let me know if you disagree with what I said, or if you want to mention some niche indie game that I forgot to mention for some reason. And also, if you really don't agree with what I said and you want to type something really, really, really mean, I don't want to scare you, but yeah, I did get a platinum trophy from Life is Strange 2. So I do think that my opinion is obviously the best of the best. So, okay, bye!
What is that melody?